The story begins in the world of yokai. It is one of many different worlds with different inhabitants and creatures. In the world of the yokai, everyone proves their existence only through force. The yokai are mythical beings in Asian mythology. You could call them demons. The main character is a yokai. For him, everything in this world was simple. Because from his birth, he was the greatest and strongest among the other representatives of his race. A fight is going on between the main character and a representative of another world. We can see a character with red hair, red eyebrows, gray beard, and fangs. This character has clearly challenged the representative of the yokai race. Two representatives of different races fighting each other. On the left, we see a representative of the yokai race. On the right, there was a creature that dared to challenge him. The character on the right had a tiger-like tail. It was an unequal battle. The main character of our story had incredible power. He was the greatest of the representatives of different worlds, and no one has ever been able to defeat him. Just like this time. The creature with the tail of a tiger fell to the ground after being hit hard. The boy who had just defeated his opponent confidently placed his foot on his chest. His opponent did not have a single chance. You bragged so much, challenging me to a fight that you wouldn't back down. But now, when you cowardly run away? When the character with the tiger's tail challenged the boy to a fight, he told him that he could easily defeat him, because no one had ever been able to do so. But this creature was confident in his abilities. But during the fight, when the character realized that he could not defeat the boy, he began to run away, but he could not get far. The boy looks at the defeated character and says to him in a calm voice, "I will repeat it a third time, especially for you, so you can understand it. Don't you dare attack any more foxes." While the boy was saying this, he put his foot on the face of his damaged opponent. The character with the tiger's tail regularly hunted the yokai and caused a lot of damage to the boy's world. But today that came to an end and the predator was finally defeated. You ignored my warning and don't even have the pride of a tiger. Is there a reason? Should I spare you? The boy continues to address the representative of the tiger race. Despite the boy's great strength, he has a sense of honor. He can spare his opponent if he showed respect to him. But this time the representative of the tiger race didn't deserve mercy. He did too much wrong to the yokai race. Damn fox! Did you think you'd beaten me? You thought it was over? The representative of the tiger race did not want to give up so easily. His eyes were burning red. Blood was streaming down his face. His face was covered with wounds and scars. All this was a consequence of the recent fight, where the tiger had taken a lot of damage. He was hungry for revenge, and he didn't want to accept his defeat so easily. Different races live in different worlds, and each race has its own secrets and abilities. And you don't always know in advance what a character is capable of. Suddenly, from a small half-man, half-tiger, the boy's opponent turned into a huge, insanely strong tiger. The tiger was about 20 feet tall, many times taller and bigger than the boy. The tiger's eyes burned red, but his gray beard remained in place. He was angry and hungry for revenge, eager to avenge his humiliation. The tiger was sure it was the boy who had not expected this. The tiger wanted to take him by surprise and surpass him with his strength and weight. Surprisingly, the boy was calm and cool-headed. He was not the least bit frightened by this sudden transformation from an ordinary man into a huge monster. The boy was one of the strongest representatives of all worlds, and he had a lot of experience in battles. Apparently, such a magical transformation did not surprise him at all. When you enlarge your body, it just becomes more meat. The boy was ready to defeat the creature once again. The boy jumped a little and hit the tiger in its huge head. The fox's blows became many times harder than they had been before. His fist burned with a blue light, and the tiger's face also had a blue glow at the point of the blow, which continued to damage him even after the blow. Apparently, the monster's sheer size did not help it overcome Yokai's strength and experience. The first blow was followed by another and another. The tiger had no time to do anything at all. The fox was more agile and faster, so the size of the tiger did not give him any advantage. After the fifth blow, there was a loud roar, and the tiger fell to the ground unconscious. It was the end. The boy was able to defeat the monster and protect his race from the villain. It seems worth telling in more detail about who this boy really is. He is the strongest fox, the strongest of his race. His name is Yunho. He is the head of the fox yokai, and the king of the yokai realm. The boy was the head of his world. He could protect members of his race from enemies, and help them with other problems. None of the representatives of other races could not defeat him. In fact, the boy didn't want to become the king of his race. He grew up in an ordinary family and never claimed to be the leader in this world. But his fighting skills were unique. No one I could ever match him and beat him. So, once the boy was able to defeat the strongest monster, the monster that had been chasing the yokai for 500 years. No one could stop this monster. Tens of thousands of foxes died through his fault. For 500 years, no one could defeat him and expel him. But the boy was able to do it. Moreover, it did not cause him much difficulty. The monster was defeated like dozens of monsters before. After the boy saved the yokai race from mortal danger, he became the universally recognized king. After the strongest of the foxes became king, they began to constantly harass him. The strongest representatives of other worlds were eager to challenge the master yokai. The news that the boy defeated the strongest monster spread throughout many worlds, and now everyone wanted to defeat him in order to gain great glory and respect in all worlds. "Who are you?" Once again, a representative of another world came to the boy with a desire to defeat him. To be honest, the boy was frankly bored. No one could seriously harm him. None of the representatives of other worlds came close to victory. Everyone said that they could easily defeat the main fox, but no one even managed to leave a bruise on his body. "I am a Dharma follower, a monk from the human realm." In front of the boy stood a short, bald man with a black beard, black eyebrows, and earrings in his ears. He looked menacingly into the face of the fox, and intended to tell him why he came to this kingdom from his own. "Scumbag! Do you know how much harm you yokai have done to humanity?" The man was holding a large stick with rings at the end. He was angry with foxes. He was sure that foxes are enemies that bring evil to humanity and interfere with its prosperity. For a long time, people accumulated anger at foxes, and now this monk came from people with a desire to deal with them once and for all. The boy still continued to calmly look into the face of this man. It was not a novelty for the boy that representatives of other races came to him with the desire to win in battle. But behind the boy stood his assistant, and he reported that this modest monk defeated 12 yokai with his strange gestures, which he called martial arts. Chief Fox had never heard anything about martial arts, and it was new to him. It should be clarified that at that time there was no border between the yokai and human realms, so her yokai often visited the people and taught problems. Indeed, between different worlds and different kingdoms, there are usually borders that are rather difficult to overcome. But there were no borders between the two kingdoms of people and foxes, and the foxes did not lose the opportunity to visit someone else's kingdom. People usually didn't like such visitors, which was the reason why this monk came to the yokai king. But the boy had no desire to deal with the next person who wanted to deal with the fox race. Catch the yokai that caused the trouble, and at least kill him, at least spare him. Decide for yourself. I don't care. All the best, humble monk. The boy calmly replied that this is a people's problem. If there are any unscrupulous and dishonest foxes, then let the people deal with them themselves and do not immediately go to the king. After these words, the boy turned around and began to leave the guest. What an irresponsible jerk! The monk was pissed off by this attitude towards himself. He could not think that the king of foxes would react to his request to his complaints in such a way. But the boy was not really irresponsible. It was just that the monk's problem was so insignificant and trivial that the Fox King simply had no interest in it. The boy often helped his race and solved the problems of his world. He was a responsible king and always solved the problems of his people. "All right, I'll do as you told me." With these words, the monk got into a fighting stance. His eyes glowing white, he swung his stick and was ready to fight. Apparently, the Fox King was the same yokai that was causing trouble for the humans. The monk had come to deal with the king, but he wouldn't listen to him. So the monk decided that he should forcefully deal with the Fox King and defeat him in battle to rid the people of the problem. The monk swung his huge stick and struck with all his might where the boy had been standing a second before. This was no surprise to the Fox King, so he instantly jumped back from the blow. This sneak attack did not surprise the fox, as he always remains vigilant. The boy noticed that the monk's physical strength and speed were on par with that of the yokai. Unlike his other opponents who were much weaker and less fast than him, this monk proved to be a strong fighter and a worthy competitor to the fox race. Is this the same martial arts? The boy remembered that the assistant had told him about this monk's special fighting technique. Indeed, for all his experience, the Fox King met a huge number of different battle tactics. But this monk was different. He was strong enough, and his technique really aroused respect. But even these martial arts were not a problem for the boy, and he easily stops the monk attacking him. The man was very surprised that his abilities and talents did not help him in the fight. The monk had been replaced by his fighting technique, and he had never lost before, but here he met resistance against which he could do nothing. The boy easily tosses the man into the air, yes, so that he flies several meters up. The monk falls helplessly to the ground and passes out. The man was too confident in his victory. The monk's fighting style was well known, and people knew about the dangers of martial arts. But the fox could not be harmed. His experience and strength is much more dangerous than any fighting techniques of humans. The monk was lying helplessly on the ground unconscious. The boy didn't want to really kill the man. The foxes and humans had a good relationship, even though there were occasional arguments and misunderstandings. But still, because of the close ties between the kingdoms of men and foxes, the boy decided to let the monk live. But he had no idea that it's actually much harder to hit someone without killing them than to finish them off for good. The king's aide went to the monk to see if he was alive. The aide reported that the monk was unconscious and suggested that the boy finish with this man, kill him so that he would not disturb him anymore and go to the kingdom. But the king refused. He forbade his assistant to kill the monk and ordered him to leave him alone. Let the man recover and go home in peace. What's the point of killing a bug crawling underfoot? The Fox King did not feel any danger to himself from the humans, so he good-naturedly decided to leave the monk who just wanted to kill him alive. After all, he doesn't see this man as a worthy enemy. After a few hours, the monk came to his senses and the Fox King's helpers helped him return home. But it seems that this foolish monk had gone mad, for he came to the boy again just 15 days later. Apparently, the monk didn't appreciate the kindness and mercy of the Fox King. After the boy saved his life and did not kill him, even though he had won the battle, how could he dare to go back to the foxes and threaten the life of their king? You disgusting yokai! Today we will finish what we started. From afar, the boy saw two dark figures approaching him. Apparently, the monk realized that he could not cope with such a strong and experienced opponent alone. Not even his martial arts could help him. So he decided to take some helpers with him. This time he took with him a comrade named Yan Sambong. Next to the monk stood a man of rather elderly voice, of Asian appearance. He had black hair and a black beard. He himself was dressed in a kimono, and on his belt was a yin and yang sign. Let's hit him with yin and yang energy. The monk's friend shouted this to his ally, but in the hope that this energy would be much stronger than the skills and strength of the yokai king. In the time after his first fight with the monk, the boy had become seriously interested in martial arts techniques. This technique seemed really strong and promising to him. The monk was much stronger than the boy's previous opponents, so he decided to learn more about the monk's technique and why it made him so strong. But unfortunately or fortunately, the monk's friend couldn't help him in any way, for the boy is now proficient in martial arts techniques. The Fox King is much stronger than the two humans, and the energy couldn't help in the fight as the monks expected. The boy was frankly bored fighting two people who were not even half as strong as him, and could not put up an equal fight. Once again it was the main yokai who won. The boy wondered if he spared them this time and sent them back. Would they come back again, but with more people? That could not be allowed to happen. The people were disrespectful, even though the boy had saved the monk's life last time. So the Fox King decided that he would make sure that no one else bothered him. From this day forward, the monk and his helpers will no longer disturb the world of the yokai. The boy didn't want to do it last time and gave them a chance, but they didn't take it, and now all the blame is only on the humans and their violent temper. But thanks to the monk, the boy had learned about martial arts tactics, and for that the boy was grateful to him. They should have retreated, given the strength of the enemy. The boy does not understand what the two men were hoping for it was known in many worlds that the Fox King had never been defeated. If they had recognized the boy's superiority, or they would still be alive. Big brother! Suddenly the boy heard a woman's voice behind him, a voice of grief and mourning. The girl was crying and the boy decided to find out what was wrong and who was making these sounds. Big brother, if you die like this, how will I live alone? Next to the body of the defeated enemy of the Fox King, a little girl sat crying and couldn't believe that her brother had died. The girl lived alone with her brother. She had no parents, so her brother was the only member of the family. And now she can't believe that she lost him, and she has no idea how she will live her life. The boy looked at the girl and was wrapped in a strange feeling he had never known before. For some reason, he felt very bad. Seeing his little sister's tears, he briefly began to doubt his recent behavior. The boy used to consider himself a cold-blooded yokai, but now something had gone wrong. It's been a week since the girl has even had a drink of water. She sits in front of 2 graves, still grieving for her brother. She no longer has any family left. Her brother was the last relative who was always by her side and took care of her. The girl does not understand what to do and how to live. Find out why doesn't she return to the human world. The boy instructed his assistant to find out why the girl spends all her time at her brother's grave and doesn't return home to the human world. The assistant of the Fox King replied that he had learned that the girl's life depended on her brother, and the brother had many enemies in his lifetime. And now the girl is in mortal danger in her own world, because now she has no one to protect her, and all her brother's enemies will try to harm her. The boy realized that it meant the girl would die if she went back to her world. She would be in mortal danger there, no one could protect her, and she would be safer here. But it will also be difficult for her to survive if she stays in the world of the yokai. The Fox King's aide said that their world is also full of dangers, and the girl can't survive alone in any world without the protection of someone older, and without a family, she won't live long. The boy realizes that at this rate, the girl will starve to death before the yokai can hurt her. She hasn't had anything to drink or eat in a week. If this continues, she won't even be able to get away from her brother's grave because she will run out of strength, so any threat from the foxes is out of the question in her current situation. The Fox King was famous for his cold-bloodedness, but now he felt very sorry for one girl and decided to help her not to starve to death. This is human food. With these words, the boy put a plate with a lot of food in front of the girl. Foxes ate different food than humans, but especially for the girl, the boy was able to find something that she would find tasty. The plate was full of meat and vegetables. The food was hot and tasty. The boy thinks he needs to cheer the girl up somehow. You need to eat well and live happily so that your big brother's soul can rest in peace. The Fox King realizes that if the girl starves, she won't be able to live long enough to die. And that's not exactly what her brother would want, so the girl must find the strength to move on with her life. The Fox King realized that if she was going to have a hard time living wherever she went, why not leave her by his side for the rest of her life? The boy looked at the girl with gray, unfeeling eyes and realized that he was saving her life and possibly changing his life forever by leaving a human beside him. Besides, it seems that the girl herself understood the boy's intentions. After all, the girl is in a desperate situation. She has no family, no one who could protect her or feed her. So the only option left is to accept the boy's offer and stay with him. The girl accepted Fox's offer without a second thought and stayed to live in his world, never returning home. Day by day, she lived in a new world and quickly adapted among the cruel yokai. The girl was a stranger everywhere, surrounded only by representatives of the alien realm and creatures unlike her. She was in danger everywhere, but despite this, she quickly adapted to the new conditions, learned new skills, and learned to live in a new world without her brother. The boy fell helplessly in love with the beautiful face of the girl. He watched her training and then how she walked, how she studied, and how she socialized with the other residents. Even from a distance, looking at her, he felt a peacefulness he had never felt in his long yokai life. One day a terrible thing happened, something for which the boy was completely unprepared. From afar he saw a terrible thing, and he refused to believe his eyes. He saw the girl on the pole. He didn't know what had happened, or who dared to harm her. He knew this world was full of danger, and leaving the girl here, the boy put her in mortal danger. But he refused to believe what he saw before him. "I have committed a grave sin." The king's aide knelt before him and confessed that he had let it happen. He let the girl die. "I should have been aware of those scoundrels who came to pay their respects to you. My carelessness brought this misfortune upon the young lady." It turned out that someone came to the kingdom and said that they wanted to greet the king and thus show respect to him. The deputy believed them and let them into their world. The creatures were deceived and they didn't have to meet the king. But on their way, they met a girl who couldn't escape. The king looked at the girl's body lying on the ground with many wounds on her face. The boy remembered the moment when he offered her to live in the same world. Remembered all the moments when he watched her while she walked and talked to the inhabitants. He could not believe that it was all real. "I loved her," the boy said quietly. He realized that the assistant was responsible for her death. He was the one who failed to watch over the visitors to the kingdom. He was the one who let people hurt the girl. He was to blame, and the king must punish him. The boy was very angry. He immediately attacked his assistant. The boy believed that he was the one to blame, and he should be punished for it. I was only following orders. I had no part in it. The assistant tried to justify himself, but it was too late. The boy was too angry. He had lost everything he had. He realized that if the assistant had behaved more responsibly, nothing would have happened, and the girl would have been by his side. It was late. The battle had begun. The boy tried his best to punish his servant for his recklessness because of his mistake. You knew but did nothing. Don't kill me. I had good intentions. They said they knew her brother. The servant tried his best to justify himself. He tried to calm the king, because he realized that in the battle he had no chance. He had seen how the boy defeated new and new opponents every time. But deep down, the servant himself knew that it was really his fault, and the king's anger was justified. You're a bastard who was unintentionally involved in her death. The boy was very angry and very upset at the same time. He was trying to take out all his pain and resentment in this fight. It was safe to say that he had lost himself. He had no control over his actions and his power. The only thing he wanted was revenge and retaliation, because it turned out that in one day he lost everything he had, all the joy and all the kindness. You're the ugly fox protecting an ordinary human girl. How could you be called the king of the yokai? A huge monster suddenly appeared in front of the boy. He looked like a pig, had a necklace of fangs around his neck, wore a huge iron belt, and had a huge spear in his hands. He was the one who had illegally entered the yokai territory, and he was responsible for the girl's death. The boy felt an incredible anger. All his thoughts were only about the place. Anger filled his whole head. The boy hit the monster with great force. He had a strength he had never felt before. He kept hitting the monster's face with more and more blows, and finally felt that he had won. Anyone who had anything to do with the girl's death, and even those who were close to the boy, could not escape his wrath. The boy could no longer control himself. The only thing he felt was anger. He killed everyone who lived in his kingdom, all the people who lived in the neighborhood of his kingdom. He felt an incredible power that was generated by revenge. He felt no more sense to live, and he lost everything he had lived for before the only thing he wanted to do was to kill everything in his path. The boy thought he would feel better if he killed them all. But his heart was still full of resentment and still beating furiously. He sincerely hoped that he would be able to vent all the anger and all the hatred that had appeared in him since the terrible news of the girl's death. But nothing helped. The anger only waited for new anger, and he could not quench his grief. I'm tired. I'm fed up with this life. I'm sick of it. The boy's life was boring and unvaried. Before the appearance of the girl in his life, he lived a very varied life no one could compare to him. The boy was the best of the best, and so he lost any interest from this life. Nothing could cheer him up or make him train and improve. After all, he was already the best. But with the appearance of a human girl in his life made sense. He liked to watch her and admire. But now all this has no meaning because the girl is no longer there, as well as the meaning of life. Suddenly something caught the boy's attention. Everywhere there was only blood and the bodies of defeated opponents. But amidst it all he saw some glow, some pleasant color that attracted his attention. It was different from everything else. It was a flower that grew straight from the blood. A lotus in a pool of blood. The boy couldn't believe it. A flower in the midst of everything that surrounded him nearby. In the midst of violence and anger, the flower looked very unusual and contrasted with its surroundings. A lotus in blood is a childish prank that only celestials are capable of. The boy realizes that the flower couldn't have just appeared here. It's someone's magic, but only a celestial is capable of such magic. None of the representatives of the worlds known to him could do such a thing. Are you the immortal Liu Dongbin or Neja? The boy tries to start talking to this miracle, wanting to know what it is in general. If you've come to stop me, as you can see it's too late. I do not wish to see any more bloodshed. The boy said this studio in the middle of a field on which the bodies of his race and humans were scattered. All these creatures were victimized by his anger, his place, and his despair at the grief that happened to the boy. And the king does not understand why the celestial creature came to him at this moment, when nothing can be undone, and everything, even the most terrible deeds, have already been done. So get out of my sight. The boy did not understand why this celestial creature appeared, because now he does not know what to do next. He does not want to communicate with anyone and see. He needs to decide what to do with his life, his aimless life, which is only on absolutely no meaning, and the celestial creature. This is not what he needs now. Suddenly the flower began to glow very brightly. It began to emit a pleasant, unlike anything else, and the light began to expand more and more and absorb everything around it. It was clear that this flower was here for a reason, and it had just appeared where the boy least expected to see it. The light finally captured all the space around him, and the boy realized that he was no longer in his world, that he was falling in space. He was transported to some incredible place. The flower was there for a reason. The boy no longer sees nothing around him, only a bright light. It turned out that at the moment when he fell into despair and lost the will to live, something suddenly came to his aid, something he could never have imagined. After all, the boy did not expect help from anyone. He is used to that he is always the strongest and the most powerful, and never expected any help and support. But here, even he realized that the situation is hopeless. The boy found himself in a huge empty space, a space filled only with orange and light yellow light. Right in front of the boy stood a huge creature in a white coat. Obviously, it was the fault of this creature that the boy was here. This flower was not an accident. It was a creature that helped all the living things in the world to stay on track. The creature looked like a man, but with large earlobes and a golden dot in the middle of his forehead. It seems that this creature appeared just at the time the boy had lost his way. He did not know what to do next and how to live. He had lost the purpose of life and its meaning. This being's name was Tathagata. The Tathagata is the material embodiment of the Buddha Absolute in any of the worlds. That is, this deity could appear in any of the existing worlds and help anyone who had lost his way, not necessarily whether he was a fox or a human being. Yunho, would you like to give up your identity as a yokai and become a human? The deity began to speak in a loud and unlikable voice. The space around the deity and the boy was completely empty and echoed after every word of the deity. Human? The boy stood in perplexity in front of a huge creature and did not understand where he got to and whether what was happening now was real. Perhaps he had already died or lay unconscious. A human life. The boy's first thought was, what nonsense is he talking about? However, upon reflection, he realized that he could have avoided the boring life, and after that he found no reason to refuse. After all, nothing interesting awaited him in his own world, only boredom and speaking for his loss. All representatives of the yokai race died, and now the boy does not know what to do in his world and why to live. So he took the deity's offer with enthusiasm, because it could give him a new hope for a new life and new emotions. I was thinking of killing myself anyway. Perhaps it would be better to live as a human being. Tathagata, turn me into a human being! The boy thought it over and finally decided that he was bored with his past life and did not want to continue it. He did not want to plunge into darkness and wrath. He was ready to accept his new destiny and find himself in a new reality and room. Of course, it's not that simple. For 1,000 years, you must atone for your sins and do good deeds. The deity realizes that the boy had gone mad in his previous life, and there is no guarantee that he will not lose his way as a human. You could not just turn a monster into another monster. So the conditions for his transformation and for his new life were the same, and the goddess just voiced it to the boy. You say I'm 1,000 years old to do this nonsense? The boy was clearly already ready to go to the new world for new emotions and sensations. But the deity claimed that for this, he must endure 1,000 years in the hope of a new life and live by this faith while doing good deeds. The boy was very surprised. But on the other hand, in his entire life, a deity never addressed him. So he did not want to lose this chance and hope for a better future. So he agreed to this proposal. In fact, the boy is immortal and used to live for thousands of years without noticing the passage of time. So he hoped that these 1,000 years would pass as quickly for him as the previous ones. But after a year of doing good deeds, it didn't seem so easy. After all, the boy had to do good deeds, something he had not done in his previous life. He never tried to be the kindest and help everyone who needed help. So this role was difficult for him, and the time went on a long time. 1,000 years seemed too long to the boy. After his return, he settled in one of the caves. In this cave, there was a large stone table, on which the boy decided to put stones representing one past year, so he hoped to collect 1,000 stones. Thoughts of giving up often crossed the boy's mind. It was normal to change the 1,000-year life of her Kai to a human life, for a human often did not live to be 100 years old. The boy had doubts whether he was doing the right thing, whether he would enjoy the life of a human being, whether he would have time to enjoy it to the full. For now he was not used to appreciating the time he had. For time for him was endless. And in the future, he would have to appreciate every minute he lived, thanks to the chance the goddess had given him. Thoughts of giving up often crossed the boy's mind. It was normal to change the 1,000-year life of a Kai to a human life, for humans often did not live to be 100 years old. The boy doubted whether he was doing the right thing, whether he would like the human life, whether he would have time to enjoy it to the fullest. For now he was not used to appreciating the time he had. For time for him was endless. And in the future, he would have to appreciate every minute he lived, thanks to the chance the goddess had given him. After years and years, the deadline finally came. 1,000 years passed and the boy appeared to the goddess again. Well done. During your penance, you have done many good deeds. The being praised the boy. The goddess had been watching him all these years and appreciated his efforts and desire to change his life. She saw all the good deeds he had done and praised him for organizing peace and prosperity in the different worlds he traveled through. The boy thanked the goddess for her praise. He had really had a hard time these years. He was not used to doing good deeds and helping everyone. But thanks to his motivation and pride of having such a chance, he managed it all. And now, you have to live as a human, so give away what you don't need as a human. The goddess knew all the secrets in the world. She knew the secrets of all creatures and all worlds. That's why she asked the boy to give up what he valued very much all his life, because in the new world he won't need it. The boy slowly lowered his hand to waist level, and in the area of his stomach he had a blue glow. Something the size of an egg, a bright blue color was rising up the Fox King's body. The boy controlled the mysterious blue ball with his hand and gradually took it out of his mouth. It was an object that gave off a very bright light. If you listened, it even vibrated a little. Probably it was impossible to touch it. So the boy kept it at a distance, levitating it above his hand. It was the fox bead, the source of the boy's power, which he had been perfecting for 1,000 years. All his life the boy had this bead inside him, and it gave him strength that no other living thing could match. And as the boy's life went on, as he gained experience, his strength increased, and he perfected this bead and developed the power that it contained. But now, it is time for the boy to say goodbye to this talisman. He goes to the world of men, and there, this bead will not work. Later, will you not regret your decision? The deity asked the boy if he was sure of what he was going to do, because there was no turning back, and he had to decide here and now whether he agreed to this path. Do I look like someone who would regret such a thing? The boy was indeed determined, and of strong character. He was not one to hesitate long and change his mind. If he decided something firmly, his decision was unchangeable, and he would follow it to the very end. This answer pleased the deity, and she nodded approvingly, waved her hand, and flashes of light began to appear around the boy again, and he began to fall into the portal. Now the boy's life is divided into before and after. He now lives in a different world, sees other creatures around him. He will have to learn to live and communicate with others in a new way, as there is no longer near him his main relic, instead of what gave him that incredible power. Everything is different now. Yokai's life was constantly weighing down on the boy, but now that he had cast it off, he felt light and happy. It was as if he had woken up from a nightmare. There was a sense of freedom and lightness in his soul that he had never felt in his previous world or body. It was a sunny summer morning. The house in which the boy found himself was surrounded by greenery, with a large number of trees standing nearby. So, with the help of the Tathagata, the boy was transformed into a human being and will now live as a human being. His story has just begun. The pink petal that flies to the body on the bed is the boy's soul, and as soon as it comes into contact with the body, the soul and the body unite and the boy is finally reborn in the new world. The petal slowly descended on the boy's forehead and dissolved on his skin. Now the body was endowed with a soul, and the boy was ready to face a new world, with its dangers, obstacles, and difficulties. Early in the morning, a maid walked down the hallway of a large house on the outskirts of the city. She was middle-aged and dressed in a green robe, a plate of food in her hands, her hair tightly tied in a bundle. We have already tried a bunch of medicines and expensive procedures, and none of it has brought any results. The woman slowly climbed the stairs and frustratedly thought about the fate of a certain boy she can't help. It seems that the heavens have turned away from us. The woman realized that in their situation, it was necessary to rely only on luck and good fortune. But by all appearances, Luck did not smile on them, and there was no hope for a favorable event at all.
What?
Suddenly entering one of the rooms, the woman was speechless with surprise. In the distance, she saw a silhouette sitting on the bed. She was not used to seeing signs of life in this place. Usually there lay motionless and lifeless boy, but now there was clearly a healthy and full of vigor man. Jesus! The woman was shocked and couldn't believe her eyes. She fell, dropping the plate she was carrying to the second floor. She could not believe her eyes, for the people in the house had only dreamed of such a miracle for a very long time. Young master. The boy meanwhile sat on the edge of the bed with a sullen and sad face. He did not yet understand what the noise was about him, or who the woman was who had fallen down shouting and had almost broken her plate in surprise. What, our son Yunho woke up? The man in surprise asked the servant standing in front of him about this incredible event. The man could not believe that his son was still alive. For a long time the man had no hope at all, and he did not know what fate was prepared for the boy, and whether he would wake up after a serious illness. Yes, the nurse was so surprised that she turned pale and could not speak properly, but she told me to tell you about it urgently. The nurse who found the boy alive still did not recover. She was so surprised, and she was so used to seeing the lifeless and emotionless body of the boy that now it became bad, and she from the last strength was able to give the servant this information to tell him about the awakening of the boy to his father. Let's go. Hurry. The man immediately threw away everything he had in his hands at that moment. He wanted to get home as quickly as possible. All he had dreamed of for the last years was that his son was alive, and now the servant was bringing him this glad tidings. The man was almost crying. He was at his wit's end when he realized that his son had woken up after a serious illness. Meanwhile, the boy slowly got out of bed and tried to look around him. He remembered some woman beside him a few minutes ago, but he wasn't sure he wasn't imagining it. What is it? I heard a woman screaming. The woman was already gone, but the boy didn't have time to look at her face and realize if what was happening around him was real or not. Looking around the room, the boy happens to notice a mirror. He walks up to it and looks in it. Wait, what? What is it? Why do I look like this? The boy remembered that he had started a whole new life in a human body, but in the mirror he saw an old enough boy who had obviously lived some time on Earth, and he didn't understand why he had appeared in a completely alien body and seemed to have started living someone else's life. Wasn't I supposed to be a child or an infant? Why is it like this? The boy remembered that people live much shorter lives, and his lifespan is very limited. He had hoped to wake up in the body of a baby and live a full human life filled with new emotions and sensations, but he woke up in the body of a boy who had obviously lived for many years, which meant that he had even less time to live than he had originally thought. The boy clutched his head. Millions of thoughts and memories began to rush through his head. One by one, he remembered individual moments from the previous life of the owner of the body. He began to remember everything that the boy who had owned the body before had once known. Memories of his childhood, of growing up, of his parents, of his friends, of how he had spent his childhood and his growing up years began to appear in his head. At first the boy was frightened by the rush of thoughts and memories, for he had never felt this way before. It was as if he had lived the entire life of another person for years in just a few seconds. Just a minute ago, the boy had been sitting on the edge of the bed in complete ignorance of where he was, where he had gotten to, and who he was. But now he had the whole story, and all of the man's memories in his head. He is the eldest son of the lord of a huge trade union called the Supreme Coalition. His name is Ha Yunho. Yunho? We have the same name. The boy is weak physically and mentally, so a year ago when his mother died, he was so shocked that he stopped eating and drinking. The boy can't believe he's in such a weak body. It's not what he expected from his long-awaited transformation into a human being. The boy has been doing good deeds for 1,000 years, hoping for a bright future in a different body and a new and different life. But things don't seem to be going the way he expected. After the shock of his mother's death, the past owner of this body developed a chronic illness and eventually died. What, dead? The boy couldn't believe he was in the body of a dead man. This was not how he had imagined his rebirth and new life. I, the former king of the yokai world, was put into the body of a cowardly weakling who lived a worthless life. The boy hoped that since he was the king of the world, he was destined for something great in the human world, because he was the king and could not be mediocre. But it seems that there are not many places in the human world, and the offerings of the goddess do not happen often, so the boy should have learned what the conditions of entering the human world are. so that he would not be disappointed. Damn Tathagata! The boy was madly angry. He was furious. How could the deity deceive him like that? He hoped for a beautiful and bright life in a new body to start life from scratch, but he found himself in a worthless body with a worthless fate and history. In his head appeared memories from a completely different person who was not related to him in any way. The boy was madly disappointed with his fate, because it was not for the sake of this he had waited for thousands of years. The boy tried to get out of bed and try out his new body. He wanted to walk around the room to feel his legs and his body, but as soon as he got up on the floor, he immediately fell down. He remembered that he was in the body of an infirm boy who hadn't eaten or drunk for a long time, so walking would be difficult at first, and he had to get used to the body. The boy was angry at the previous owner of the body. Even before his past life, the boy had no tolerance for weak and aimless people. He didn't respect that way of life. If you wanted to make up, you should have gone and died. What did you want to achieve by measuring your body like that? The boy asked his previous body owner with this question. After a while, the former Fox King realized that he had only himself to blame for this situation. He should have foreseen it and put forward conditions that would prevent such situations. The boy realized that his anger was useless. He should have foreseen all this earlier, and then maybe he could have saved himself from such torment in a new body. But now there was nothing to be done, and he would have to survive as fate offered him. Won't you regret it? The boy remembered those words and immediately regretted that she hadn't caused any conditions then, but it was too late anyway. The boy tried to calm down and pull himself together. Calm. Now I am the master of this body. No regrets will help now, and the boy must learn to get used to the human, new body. For this he must relearn to walk and do simple things of life. I can easily strengthen this body using natural energy. The great thing about natural energy is that it can turn a dog into a warrior and make a warrior even stronger. The boy realized that it was in his power to strengthen this body and make it stronger than it was before. He will have to live the rest of his human life like this, so he must do everything he can to improve his life and to live it well. We should eat first. The boy suddenly realized that he was insanely hungry. His body hadn't eaten in years, and maybe that was one of the reasons for his weakness. The boy tried to find some food in the room he was in. What do we have here? Is there any food? The boy looks around the room hoping to find something to eat. He opens various drawers, looks through the nightstands and under the bed. But there's nothing in the room, and it would be strange to keep food in a room with a half-dead man. Suddenly the door to the room opened and behind it appeared the boy's father, followed by the servant who had discovered him in the morning. The boy shuddered with fright. He had not expected such a loud greeting in his honor. The father couldn't believe that it was real until he got to his house. He thought he had been tricked or played, but it was true. His son woke up. Father cried with happiness. Ha! This brat stands firmly on his feet. The father could not believe that the son not only woke up and remained alive, but he also had the strength to walk and move confidently around the room. Because during the boy's illness, all his strength left, and he could not even lift his head to eat. But now his strength returned, and his father was extremely happy. How are you? Is something hurting? The father could not believe his happiness. He grabbed his son's hands and tried to ask him everything, how he was feeling, if you were worried about anything. He could not believe that his son woke up in full health, and he was not threatened by anything else at all. The boy didn't recognize the man who ran up to him with tears in his eyes. But then the memories started to come back to his mind. He remembered going for walks with his father as a little boy, how he taught him and told him stories. Father? Is that you? The boy asked with slight uncertainty, as the memories still kept popping up in his head by the thousands. Yes, you know, do you recognize me? The father still couldn't believe his happiness, before the boy finally lost consciousness. The last days of his illness, the boy stopped recognizing his father and his family. He didn't communicate with services and didn't say anything at all. But now everything had changed, and the father couldn't believe it. I am the lord of this place. Ha-Jin Yu, your father! It turned out that this boy's father was a lord, which wasn't so bad since it meant that the boy didn't live in such a poor family, and that was an advantage compared to his weak body. Nanny, bring us some food! Lord realized that the boy hadn't eaten or drunk anything for several years, and he needed food to regain his strength. Lately, before his illness, the boy had been refusing food and water. But now, seeing how much his strength had increased, Lord realized that it was time to recover from his illness and bring the boy any food he wanted. Yes, all right, Lord. The nanny accepted his father's request and left to get food. A tray with a plate and a spoon was placed in front of the boy. In the plate was a strange human food. The boy had never tasted it before. He had not often eaten human food, and so it was new to him, any human delights and tastes. His father was sitting at the table with the boy. The nurse was standing next to him, watching the healthy boy. The father still could not believe his good fortune and gazed at his son. The father expected that because the boy had not eaten for many years, he would pounce on the food and start eating very much and quickly. But the boy was in no hurry to start tasting the food. Human food. The boy didn't know much about human food. He'd only seen it a few times while feeding the girl he'd taken into his world. As a yokai, the boy had tasted human food a few times out of curiosity, but the taste of it was disgusting. The food was bitter and caused Wild to reject it. When he fed the girl, he tasted what she ate a couple times, but the boy never liked it. The boy took a spoon, scooped up some food and smelled it. I don't want to eat it. But now that I'm human, I have to eat it. The boy realized that he wouldn't live long if he didn't eat. He wouldn't be able to find yokai food in this world. So if he wanted to live and realize the chance the deity had given him, he would have to eat human food. With these thoughts, the boy put the spoon in his mouth and swallowed its contents. He was afraid that he might vomit or that he would become disillusioned with human life and would not want to continue living, because food is something without which it is impossible to exist. If every day begins and ends with agony, then life will become torture. After the boy swallowed the food, he immediately changed his face. His father noticed it and started to worry. What is it? The father was very happy that his son was awake and sitting next to him again, but he was afraid that he might get sick again. What is this? The boy wanted to know what food was brought to him and what he had just eaten, because the emotions that filled him were incredible. The nanny was in charge of the food in this house. She always cooked, cleaned, and brought food to the owners. That's why she answered the boy's question. It's oatmeal cooked on a low fire with finely chopped vegetables and meat. This dish was often cooked in this house, and so the nanny was a little worried and didn't understand what she had done wrong and whether the boy liked it or not. Oatmeal, the boy questioned the nanny, for he had never heard of such a dish. There was nothing like it in the fox world. The nanny became worried that the boy was unhappy with the food she had prepared. I know you may not like it because I hardly added any seasoning, but if you eat salty or fatty food on an empty stomach, you might get sick. I made no attempt to justify myself and promised the boy that as soon as he was better, she would make him whatever he wanted. But now he was in a serious condition and needed to eat light food. This is delicious, the boy shouted with delight. He didn't even expect to like human food so much. It was better than anything he had eaten in the previous world. As soon as he swallowed the first spoonful of porridge, he felt a huge number of different flavors. He was actually insanely hungry, but he didn't even realize it. Can I have some more? The boy quickly ate the whole bowl of porridge. It was the most delicious food he could remember. The boy was insanely hungry. His body hadn't eaten in years, and he immediately asked for more as soon as he finished the last spoonful from the plate. I didn't know human food could be so delicious. The boy liked his current body. Only recently, he was upset and angry that he was reborn not in the body of a baby, but in an already adult body. But now he began to enjoy human life. He enjoyed the food immensely. Well, that's not such a bad start. The boy's recent disappointment was replaced by joy. He realized that life in human form was not as bad as he had thought at first. After he had eaten, he gained a little strength and remembered that this was what he had waited and endured for 1,000 years for. So now he had to start restoring the strength of this body. The boy's father was still over the moon with happiness. He was overjoyed at his son's return. For the last few years, he had only dreamed of his son's return and recovery. And today was the day I was the happiest man in the world. Today is a happy day. My son is awake. With these words, the father raised his glass and called on the people gathered around him to rejoice with him. I want to share this toast with everyone who lives on this earth with me. The father stood on a small stage in front of a large number of people, and all the inhabitants were overjoyed at the miraculous return and healing of the boy, and all rejoiced with the Lord. Hooray! Hail to the Lord of the Coalition! To our Lord! Hooray! The whole city rejoiced that day. Hundreds gathered in the main square to celebrate the boy's return. How it's noisy! In a small pavilion in the middle of a small lake, a girl was standing and reading a book. All the surrounding noise obviously interfered with her, and she did not understand what is the reason for such joy of people. Has something happened? A servant who worked in the house was standing near the girl, and she answered, Yes, it has happened. The young master is awake. The girl dropped the book at the same second and opened her mouth in surprise. What? Brother woke up? The girl couldn't believe her ears. She couldn't believe that her brother, who had been struggling with the disease for a long time, had finally come to his senses. Now she understood why the whole town was rejoicing. Some time has passed. A boy is running in the courtyard of the Lord's house. The boy is very often jogging, thinking that it is this exercise that will help him in the future. Regular exercise very much exhausted the boy, quickly tired. So after another run he stopped, put his hands on his knees out of severe shortness of breath, and tried to gain strength, and rested. Shit, what's the problem? The training of the boy was observed by the workers of the Lord's manor. They often saw him practicing and did not understand the reasons for such unusual behavior. Although there were many workers in the house and they worked in shifts, all of them saw the boy practicing. He's running in the courtyard again. Looking out the window once more, the servant noticed the boy running past. They often saw him in this place. It was the courtyard of the Lord's house that was the favorite place for training. The services in bewilderment watched the strange behavior of the boy. Looking up from their routine affairs, they periodically watched him. Has it been 10 days already? The young master became strange after waking up. It was as if something had moved into him. They remember him even before the moment of a terrible illness. While they watched him for 10 days after recovery, they noticed many strange things that the master did not do before the illness. According to the servants, with the exception of meals with the Lord, he always ran like this before sitting down on a bench and meditating. The boy interrupted his training only to eat with his father, for he still loved human food, and every time he tasted more and more dishes that his nanny prepared for him. But after regular meals he resumed his training and then sat down to rest and think about something very important. He could sit for a long time with a pensive face. It was obvious that the boy was thinking about something. Well, maybe he's thinking about something important. One of the words suggested that the boy had something to think about after years of unconsciousness. Ha ha! Something important! The second servant did not believe the first one, for he doubted the boy's intellectual abilities and thought him frankly stupid. Others can memorize 1,000 classical characters in a month, but it took him over a year. Yes, the boy before his illness had indeed had a hard time studying. Studying was hard for him, and writing was the hardest task. It was because of this that many of his servants and friends thought him foolish, and it was because of this that one of the servants now doubted that he was contemplating this important. It was obvious to the second servant that the boy was not doing this because he had a purpose. All the other servants seemed silent on the outside, but in fact, they think the same as he does. Everyone doubts the boy's serious purpose. Some think it's a consequence of illness, and the boy needs help. Suddenly, the servants noticed that there was a silhouette behind them. This man had been listening to their conversation all this time and did not show it. So the young master has turned into an idiot? The servants were dumbfounded by such a sudden appearance of a man, and they were very ashamed. It was the vice lord, and he had been standing behind them the whole time, listening to what they were saying. He looked disapprovingly at the servants and didn't understand why they were discussing the lords of the negative key. There are some things you can't say behind someone's back. At least watch your mouth when discussing those who pay you. The vice lord was outraged by the servants' attitude. He didn't understand how they could dare to speak so badly about the owners of this house, the house where they themselves worked and were paid. He wanted to shame the servants so that they would never do it again. The servants were incredibly embarrassed, and they lowered their heads and nodded silently to the man. One of them seemed to have forgotten to close the door, so they didn't notice that someone else had entered the room, who could hear their conversations. The vice lord, after talking to the servants, went outside and looked at the boy who was running around the courtyard. He too often watched him for his training sessions, but the men paid no attention to the boy's strange behavior. They were just glad that the young master had returned, recovered, and was now enjoying life together with all the inhabitants of the house. For years they dreamed that the boy finally got out of bed and was able to continue his happy life, and now their dreams have become a reality. After another workout, the boy sat down and closed his eyes as he usually does after every run. Ah, now I see. Even after 2 weeks of absorbing people's energy, I couldn't gather a single drop in this damn body. It turned out that it was not so simple. With his jogging, the boy was trying to gather natural energy in order to restore the strength of his body, and when he sat pensively after each training session, he tried to check whether he had succeeded in gathering this energy or not. Of course, the servants and other inhabitants of the house could not think about it, so they found the boy's behavior very strange. All this is because the energy flow has been contaminated by human impurities. The boy was very upset that he had wasted his time and run around the courtyard for 2 weeks for nothing. But he found the reason for his failure. The boy was wise enough in his past world to know about human impurities and their effect on energy. The boy decided to go outside the courtyard, but at the gate, he was met by the guards of the house of the Lord and told him, "I'm sorry, but the Lord ordered not to let you out of the courtyard until you recover." The guards were clearly following the orders of the Lord and watched the boy, so that he did not leave the closed area, because his father was very worried about the boy and did not want anything else to happen to him. "Come on, it's all right." The boy tried to answer the guards and talk them down. "We can't let you out," the guards insisted. They could not disobey the Lord's orders and let the boy out. This disappointed him greatly. "If I was still a yokai, you would be dead," thought the boy. But unfortunately, he has gotten rid of all his powers and can't threaten the huge guards standing in his way. There's nothing I can do about it. The boy planned to go outside the courtyard to find a place where the streams are not polluted and he can get the natural energy unhindered. But his plans were not destined to come true. He would not be allowed outside this courtyard. Nevertheless, there were still weak currents there as well. The boy had no choice but to concentrate harder on training and trying to get that weak flow of energy, as it was his only chance to make his body stronger and more resilient. The boy had no time to wait for his father to let him go outside. The boy closed his eyes, hoping to concentrate, but suddenly heard footsteps approaching. "Big brother, hi, what are you doing?" In front of the boy stood his little sister. She was wearing a pink robe. In this house, it was customary for boys to wear green robes and girls pink. The girl was very excited to meet her brother and wanted to know what he was doing. The boy did not expect such a sharp greeting, and because of the sudden appearance of his sister, he was a little frightened and jumped back from her slightly. It was the boy's little sister. Her name was Hasomi. She loves him very much. When the boy just woke up, the girl came into his room and hugged him tightly. She cried a lot and was incredibly happy that the boy had recovered. Since the boy woke up, the girl always comes to visit him when she has time. The girl loves her brother very much since childhood. They spent a lot of time growing up and therefore checked each other out more than anything else. But unfortunately now, the younger sister was one of the reasons that prevented the boy from absorbing the natural energy. But he couldn't reject his sister, as he had memories in his mind of how close he and her were. And the boy couldn't do bad things to the girl. So what do we have in the end? In the beginning, we met a boy who was the king of the yokai race. The boy was incredibly strong. From birth, he was gifted with incredible power. In all worlds, there is no one in strength equal to him. Anyone who dared to challenge him would die. The boy was proud to be king of the foxes. He nobly defended his people against all enemies. But one day the boy met a girl. He defeated her brother in battle, and now the girl was left without any family at all. The boy decides to shelter the girl in his world. He falls in love with her, and spends many hours watching her grow up. But one fateful day, the king's aide didn't see it coming and let monsters into the world. These monsters encountered the girl, and she died. The boy was furious, and in a fit of rage destroyed all the inhabitants of his world. The boy lost the meaning of life. He did not know why to continue to exist. If there is no one for whom he would like to live, there is no one who could defeat him to force him to train and learn something. After all, he was already the best of the best. At this moment, the boy appeared. To the goddesses offered him to become a man, a mortal man, and to know all the difficulties and joys of human life. The boy agrees to this proposal, but in order to be reborn in the new world, he has to spend 1,000 years doing good deeds in his old world to prove that he is worthy. The boy successfully lives 1,000 years, and the goddess sends him to the human world. The boy gets into the human body. It turns out to be a boy who was sick for a long time and died, but the king of foxes got into his body. And now the whole family of the boy is happy that he returned to their lives. And now the former king of foxes will have to reacquaint himself with the new world.